Hello and welcome to Data Delicacies, the show where we explore the intersection of data and hospitality and discuss the varying impacts it has on both operators and consumers alike. Every bite we take tells a story, and we aim to dive deep to see where technology meets gastronomy. How can data be the secret ingredient to success to enrich the culinary experience for both operators and consumers alike? That's what we aim to find out by getting the best and brightest minds in the industry together. I'm your host, Arun Kumar, and this is presented by Incentivio. Who is Incentivio? We are the ultimate guest engagement platform for restaurants. In a world where every customer experience is a story waiting to be written, Incentivio is that digital pen that curates these narratives. We're not just another SaaS platform, but a culinary companion and a strategic partner with the mission to enhance the guest experience and help operators supercharge their efficiency. Today, I'm super excited because we have an amazing guest. We have the founder of Due Cucina, Davide Macchi. Davide, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. Davide, you have probably one of the most unique and coolest backgrounds I've seen for someone that works in hospitality. I'd love for you to talk about the origin story of your time, your background. Again, I know you have an MBA, I believe, from MIT, and your founder also has an amazing background. I'd love for you to kind of start there and talk about that brought you into the world of restaurants.
Yes, sure. It's always fun for us to share. And let me apologize with all the listeners for my accent. I'm Italian, sadly, and I learned English too late to clean that up. And so I'm going to deal with this for the rest of my life. About us and our story, I think, schematically, many people think that there are two types of restaurateurs. There is the one that starts at the dishwasher and walk all the way up and is the food person. And so there is a success story. And then there's also a bunch of folks that brag of having zero restaurant background, but many people that come from technology or with very fancy higher education, and they show up and say, I don't know anything about food, but I'm going to disrupt with my new concept, right? And I think when I think about us, I think we kind of fit both. We are, on the one hand, yes, when we go to investors and we tell our story, sure, we have fancy degrees. I studied economics. I worked as a consultant. I worked in technology, and I got my MBA at MIT. My co-founder Filippo is a nuclear engineer. He studied in Italy. He worked in research. He got his PhD in nuclear science in China while he was learning Chinese and teaching food. And also doing some guest appearances on a TV talk show. It was like a resident Italian chef. So it's like, we have the fancy degrees, right? But at the same time, we're not, we have done our fair share of hours work in the restaurants, as I touched on before. We learned English, both Filippo and I together. We went to London this summer after the first year of college. And we learned English that way, waiting tables. So we put hours in there. And throughout all college, we always worked restaurants. I was mostly a server. People worked both as a server and in the kitchen. Our summers were filled with, wedding caterings in Tuscany. So we've done a lot of those. And so we got our hands, dirty, so to speak. And we've done our first share of dishwashing too. And so I think we're kind of like in between. And the experience, especially of, enjoying the summers and loving the industry, paired up with all the other things that we learned in the other experiences that we had across the globe, because we both worked internationally, kind of like led us to, what if we put these two things together and we build a brand with the most best-in-class technology and a data-driven approach, but also built by people that really love the personable and kind of like the interpersonal aspect of hospitality. That's how we start. And so I think I always like to put our background in perspective and not lean only on one side of the story, especially just only on the degrees, for example. But it's good. It helps.
Yeah, and again, that's amazing. And the reason I love to ask that is because it always gets a good sense of your why, right? Like everyone has a why they do anything, and I think you've shown there kind of like your why and why you got into it. So, what made you choose coming to the US and starting this amazing brand here?
Yeah. So the real origin story, the moment of when we had the light bulb on our head was in 2013. Filippo was doing his PhD in Beijing, in China. and I was working in a startup in Australia, in Sydney. And so being like both very far away from most of our friends, we were kind of 8 hours away. And so he came to visit me for a few days once, and he was thinking of me, and he will come with me for lunch while I was on break from my company, and we couldn't find pasta, right? And it's like, for Italian people really born and bred, we realized, and he told me Beijing is the same. And I was like, well, when I studied abroad in the US, it was the same. And we were like, yeah, it's actually really, really hard to find pasta, but it's a big staple for us and for Italian people, like pasta and a few other, all of the other Italian dishes that are not pizza. Like pizza is kind of a different animal, but like Italian, everything but pizza is really not accessible. And so we started like wondering, but we thought people love it, and people love to have Chinese and Thai like for lunch because it gives you any carbs and protein, and it kind of like it's comforting, and so it's kind of a proxy, right? So we thought there was a market, and then from that kind of insight, the same night we started like a night working on like what if we do a business plan, and we worked on this remotely for a couple of years. On the one side was a side project for both of us because he was pursuing, he was doing a PhD in nuclear engineering. He wasn't doing it just for fun, right? Because I assumed it was not very fun. And I was working, I had my own like, startup dreams, and technology is always working in technology is always seem more like attainable to build your own company than in a different type of like more capital intensive like industry. And so we brought it along, but the more we thought about it, the more we thought with the shifting consumer taste, the growth of fast casual, we thought, but there is like, this is not only like a fun retirement project. This is a big unserved segment in a gigantic growing industry, and we can bring our smarts. And so it became more tangible. We started imagining. And then the closer that we got, in 2015, we committed. Filippo and I decided, okay, I'm going to graduate, from my MBA in 2016. Because, after I was, I'm going to confuse the listeners, but yes, I was in Australia until 2014. Then I started my MBA. 2014, Filippo was wrapping up his PhD, and we both made a genuine commitment. Like, we're going to do this, so we're going to plan everything the next year of our lives accordingly to make this happen. And this is a commitment that is easy to make when you're working with your best friend. Like Filippo and I went to high school. Right. Because, it's harder when you do it, for instance, with a business school friend. Because a business school friend, right, you give up a lot of things, and then the person at the last minute, like, yeah, I don't want to do this startup anymore. Yeah. But with Filippo, we made this commitment. We trust each other enough that we put our lives into each other. We walked this one way. And so fast forward that, in 2015, we make the decision. 2016, we both graduate, and we decided, where do we start this? And we had many options, because we could have done it in China, we could have done it in Australia as well. Yeah. We had a lot of friends, but we thought the US was like clearly the biggest unserved market, and we could see ourselves like growing up, families here. And so we decided, we've been like all over the place for several years. Let's go to another place yet again. And we did a little bit of a study. We picked Seattle as a test market for the concept. We bought another time, got on a flight, and moved to a new place for almost the final time. And that's how we started.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredible story. And again, and you, what I wanted to ask you there was, I've also grown up all over the world. I mean, I only came to Canada in 2000, so I spent time in Europe. I was born in India. I spent some time in the Middle East as well. And I think one of the things I found when I came to North America was the dining experience as a whole was a little bit different than how it was. I just want to ask you, you've also spent a lot of time all over, in different parts of the world, especially in Europe. I found the dining experience is much more of it's more of a get together, right? And then you eat, versus I felt like when I first came, to North America many, many years ago, it felt like very transactional. Like you eat your own meal and you go. So did you have that same experience when you came over in terms of the change in dynamics of what eating out was?
I completely agree with you. I think it's extremely different, and we can make a very, very, very long list of all the reasons why the differences. Like, for instance, I think in dine out a lot more. Like, there's a lot more frequency of dining out. People like, young professionals, they might dine out almost every night. Or like, And so they need the transactional meals. While in Europe, we dine at home. At least in Italy, like we dine at home for most of the time. But when we go out, we go out. We want to be served. We want a great experience. We want to sit at the table for 3 hours. We go through 2 or 3 bottles of wine with a big group of friends. We go through the entire menu from the first category to the last. And at the end, we get the coffee. And after the coffee, we get liquor because we want to just stay alone. And so it is different. I think the frequency of the weekday and the lunchtime kind of like dine out market makes it much more transactional. We experience also it's less of a social experience as you were pointing to. Like, when you think about a store, you need to have spots when you think, okay, what if somebody wants to eat alone? How do I make the person feel comfortable, right? And in certain markets more than others, like we are in a market that really push this concept to the most, because Seattle, there's a lot of like single young engineers, a lot of people are very digitally digitally driven, and so people actually want the kiosk. Like most of the time, I guess if you put a kiosk in most places, like after they've been taking orders, in most cities people will be the kiosk is okay, but I liked it more when I had the personal interaction. In Seattle, you take order and then you deploy a kiosk, and your feedback is, "Oh, great! So I don't have to talk to people, right?" And you're like, "Oh, it's different." So you have all of those aspects. I think maybe, and we ran through all these challenges because we've been abroad, but we've not spent that much time in the US, and our hospitality was mostly needed. Our hospitality background was mostly needed, and so we came from a different culture, and so we ran through a lot of the problems. I will say that the biggest one, at least in my opinion, like the biggest leap that we had to make to really, from having a small restaurant that's kind of doing so and so to be successful, was kind of the importance of in the brick and mortar experience, and then followingly in the digital experience. The fact that having amazing food is really not enough. And the way you're branding your space and the materials, and whether your table is one type of food or another, whether your dining room is bright or dark, whether the light is warm or cold, all of these pieces, which I translate broad in terms of like branding, even though it's simplified, that makes as much as your food, and that blew our mind. Because in Italy, if you come to me in my home, my place, if you visit me, I'll bring you to a place near Pisa. I'll bring you to a place. We drive to the middle of nowhere, and the place looks ugly. And I'll tell you, but you trust me, because the food is gonna be amazing, and that's all we care about: good service and amazing food.
Right.
Nobody, I never crossed my mind that if the ceiling is painted black or white, doesn't matter. If there's cute art on the wall, or if it's kitsch and art, doesn't matter. In all my background, it never mattered. But in Seattle, we found out. So we started really with this mind: amazing food. And then we realized, look, but people eat. The flavor change based on the way your table is. Okay, we're gonna play that game too. It's important, and now I'm less. At the beginning, we were more like and somewhat almost disappointed about this, right? Because food is king. But now we came around this and we realized, look, but it is important. Like it's every angle, and I'm talking about brick and mortar a lot, the four walls, but the digital experience is exactly the same thing. The way your experience, your flow, your branding, like your fonts, like your color set, your food photography, that's that tells your brand. And why would we give up on like selling the best version of ourselves and setting the right expectation?
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing for us.
Yeah. No, that's I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I saw one of your posts. I think you recently posted something on LinkedIn about the importance of brand. And actually, I do want to take you up. I'd happily come to Italy and go to that place. That sounds amazing. I love hole in the wall places, because again, I think I also come from that world, so I understand that part of it too. Like again, even growing up in India, it's very much of like the food is the core of it, right? Like I've gone to places at a hole in the wall, but it's like the amazing food. I'm like, I would go back to this place 100 times over. And so I guess, how much would you say, it sounds like it's a bit of the food experience itself, but also the psychological branding, and how much have you found is that, you've had to focus on that as much as food? Like what percentage would you say is a split of what you're focused on the brand side, but also the food side?
Well, glad you asked that question. It's, we're lucky. One of the best things about of us. Right? So we get to we have twice the attention span, right? If I was alone, I wouldn't know. And good thing is that we complement each other very well. So we try to, have it both ways. So Filippo really focus on the food and food, how do we make what we make the freshest, the best, the better tasting, and the most operationally easy and scalable to build. So there is an engineering aspect to the food, and there is the flavor component and the research that goes into. But then there's the branding side, and we try to split it kind of almost in this way. That's it. So we kind of give it almost equal importance. One funny story is, not really funny, but it's kind of it's an anecdote that could be interesting. Is when we opened up our first store, and we had this tech mindset, this tech and Italian restaurateur mindset. That was, we're going to open up a store. We're going to build it with as little money as we can. We're not going to go raise money and give out a lot of ownership to people, and nobody wants to give you money anyways because you never opened up a restaurant before. We're going to do it with our money, with our labor. We're going to build it out. It's going to look ugly. Doesn't matter because the food is going to be amazing. 100% Italian mindset. We do this. We did a restaurant it was really ugly. We got all the wrong architectural choices, white ceiling, bright neon light. It looked like a mattress shop. It was bad. But the food was great. And so we get great reviews, but we don't get much traction, right? And even people driving through the street at night, the sign was not illuminated, they couldn't see. And so it took a year and a half, and okay, this place, how come we get these great reviews, but we don't pick up steam? And then, we changed, we hired someone to help us, still in a very scrappy manner. And we came up with three cheap things we could do that could change the script. And so we painted the walls, we painted the ceiling, we removed the lighting that we had, and we went to Home Depot. We bought a bunch of string lights.
Yeah.
Outdoor patio string lights. We put those, we paint the ceiling dark, we change the wall yellow and green, and we put an illuminated sign outside. 20 grand of work, maybe overall, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
We paid that with credit card, with 0% APR credit cards, right? Which I'm proud of, because resourceful. And this is when you do, I'm gonna put all my chips in this. I swear, within a week, the moment the lighting and the ceiling was painted and the lighting changed, revenue is up 35%.
Wow.
Right? That's how impactful that thing was. The food was already there. And so, your original question was how much we focused. I think, there's two of us, so we go 100% on both. But, deep down, the food is still more important than the brand, because, it's cultural to us, and the difference that the branding makes is, branding can help you increase, branding and your CRM and all the experience help you increase frequency or help you grow faster. But I still think, or help you, people come to you in different occasions. But, overall, it's great to accelerate ramp, to generate word of mouth, to have a place that people want to be inside and not just to take out and run home just because they like blinding them.
Right.
But overall, I think food is still more important because people eat, especially what we do. It's so, I think, unique and needs to be really the best version of itself.
Yeah, and I love that example because tell me if I have this right. It sounds like brand is what brings people in, and food is what keeps them there.
That's right. I think so. Yeah. I will summarize to that, and then in the brand there's what people. Branding also engage them, and so I think the branding in a way increase your market, your addressable market, because if your food is amazing, people will do takeout from you, right? I think if they try once, and so you have to make them try it, and then they'll do takeout and delivery. But if you want them to dine in, then you need to be able to cater to a couple of extra things. Have a little bit of a drink menu, have a value proposition, have a good presentation, and having an environment where you can socialize. So. In a way, that's how we help, because the difference is if your customer only take out and delivers.
Right. Yeah. It's creating that experience. I know even for myself, it's when I decide to dine in versus go out and eat. I definitely know if I'm looking to go out somewhere to eat, to have the experience, right? To have the ambience, the music, the lighting, to your point. It's somewhere where I want to hang out for 3 to 4 hours and get a few bottles of wine and just hang out. I think that definitely makes a huge difference versus some places are more catered to hey, I just want to order at home and sit at home and maybe sit in front of the TV and eat the meal. So I know that branding is a big piece of it. I'd love to hear about, your thoughts as you talk about a lot of eating inside versus the digital experience, right? That online people picking up. How did you have to pivot to make sure that you could still provide that same experience? And how did you see the business expand past that four walls of your brick and mortar location?
No, it's another great question, Arun. You're doing great here on this episode. We're very focused on delivery as well, and I think that's why we're here. First part, because I mean that's how we went through COVID. That's what we were even before COVID. So for us, COVID was more like doubling down on capabilities that we had and expanding them rather than converting from a dining into a delivery. We always look at this. Is the same customers both eat in and dine out. So we got so eat in meaning like actually meant to say the same customer bought order and dine in on premise as well as take out and gets delivered. These are all different use cases by the same people, and so we serve them food in different touch points. And so I think on the delivering of premise, like we made an investment like at the relatively early, and it was accelerated by COVID in terms of like how do we kind of like give an experience like a virtual experience, which could be your website. Part of it is your website because you're teasing people. Another part is your social media, because you're like being part of the conversation and you're presenting them, information and kind of like visually making them feel like you're there in your place. But then most of all, like the online ordering and everything that happens after you order. Like how do we build that experience in a way that, of course, the branding is cohesive, and to do that, you need a solid, like you need an understanding of what your brand should be. You need branding guidelines. That's our. Then you need the technology that lets you do it. For example, one of the many reasons why we partnered up with Incentivio early on, because when we partnered up, we only had one location, but we wanted a tool that could grow with us, but also a tool that give us like they will wrap the customer in our branding, in our colors, and provide good customization. So the Incentivio platform, actually, the online ordering and the mobile app, would do a terrific job at presenting our brand, and we can customize it. And so we think about that. We think about that a lot. We think about that in a multi-channel fashion. We made the investment early on, and to us, it's a very big part of the business. We do about 40% of our business. Probably 50% if we include like customer pickups that are placed online and delivered to our own drivers. Probably almost half of our business is consumed off premise. So it's a pretty important piece.
That's amazing. And you have multiple, and you mentioned you're opening up a couple more locations. How many locations will that bring you to total now?
Right now we have 4 operating and 2 in construction. One in construction is the 4 we are operating are all in the Seattle metropolitan area. We're opening up a 5th still in Seattle in Redmond, which is the city near to the Microsoft campus. And then the 6th one is going to be a big deal for us because we're opening up and we're about to break ground with construction. We're opening up in Dallas, Texas. So we're the first out-of-state unit. We're hoping to do 2 units in Dallas this year. So we're actively looking for another site, but one is a lease that is already signed and construction is about to start very soon. Our first out-of-state proof of concept for our brand, because what we see from investors and we see from the restaurant community, a lot of that is it can be a local operator that can it can just show up if everything is in your own native market. You can always show up, you can always fix things, and you can run quite a few restaurants that way. Around 5, 6, 8, 10. Like, you're not showing that you can scale yet because the market knows you. And for some reason, you work. The real test, and it's going to be a massive test, is can we replicate what we do thousands of miles away? Like, and will the market be, like, even if we can replicate exactly what we do operational, will the market like it? And if they do, then you can tell a story to investors and you can be on your way to become a national brand. And that's the kind of belief that we're trying to do. And so, yes, we have, we have 4 operating since last year and 2 that are coming very soon, hopefully 3. So it's a very exciting time, very busy.
That is. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, from going from Seattle to Dallas. I mean, wishing you all the best there, and keeping an eye on that success. You talk about how you partnered with this Incentivio in the early days to kind of help grow that brand presence. And a big part of what we do is surface a lot of data. And again, data is becoming data, AI, ML, all those words are very much buzzwords that we hear a lot about. But again, you come from very much a data-driven approach. You talk about that, just even from your background. We'd love to hear about what type of data do you look at on a daily basis, and then even on a larger sense, as you're looking at both your current locations and as you start to grow, what does that look like for you? Like, what does data mean to you, and how to use that data to then propel the business to a next level?
Yeah, that's very telling. So we do, we kind of like, we look at two things, like I'd say actually, in terms of projects, the way we kind of like try to think through the problem. One is an architectural problem. You have data everywhere. Like, there's a lot of data, for example, in Incentivio. Like, we get so much information about the order from us, where they order, how much they order. But then there is a lot of data also like in our POS, like all the stuff, people that come in, and then there is all the data on the third-party platforms, and then there is many other data that are operationally related to the restaurant. Like, for instance, your employees punch in, do the punch in on time, the punch in late. How does the punches and the hours they work relate to revenues, and many more systems that we use. So one is an architectural problem, and it's how does a restaurant bring everything together first so that you can do things, and then decide what to do with the data. But if the data is all parsed in many different places, in many different formats, that's a complicated thing. And that's why we have started that work very, very early. Like 2 locations, we built our own data warehouse on the cloud. Last year we built our own API integrations, and so like we integrate with our POS. We don't have to manually data, but we're trying to bring everything in the same place so that we have a data warehouse with all of our data, and then a visualization tool web-based visualization tool in which we publish weekly business reviews that goes to our stakeholders, to our managers, and so our managers know the revenues, where they come from, our speed of service, the time on the kitchen display system, how well their team is doing, how many hours they schedule, what the productivity, what's the labor. We build all of those information, right? And CRM reports, how is your customer frequency going, stuff, the architecture. Then the other problem is what you do with the data, right? And so once we build all this stuff, we determine what we do. And I think, it's a field that is developing very, very, very quickly. With Sash from the CEO from Incentivio, we actually have a lot of informed conversation about this. I like to pick his brain. We overall, like excluding the operational side, what you do with the data that tells you how good you are at your job. There is, I think the most interesting, and there is a lot of stuff in there, but I think the most interesting stuff is really how do you get more revenues, where your revenues come from, and what's your customer behavior. So, a couple of things that we do, and then we'll double down more. One is, really being able to segment your customer base, like understanding, like building customer profiles based on behavior, based on like what they like, based on like their social demographic data, and kind of like understand if your customers are like this, if you have this many customers that order from you, what's their behavior, and who's churning, who should you sell more, and to that front, there's many different ways to do it. I think customer data platforms are really emerging, and now they're pretty well established. And once again, here's the goal is really to deduplicate. The same customer might order in person, dine in, with a credit card, and they might order on Uber Eats when they're home. And at a certain point in time, the same customer, you tease them, and he downloads the Due Cucina app, and he starts ordering from us because he really wants to win the t-shirt. Right. Or want to get a discount, right? Or he realizes that if you order directly from us, he pays less. And so, but this is, to the systems we have, they look like 3 different people, but the same one. So customer data platform really do the job at deduplicating, kind of like merging customer profiles, and then building the story. And on top of that, a lot of like analytics of like, recurrency and and how often they come, and which menu items perform well with them, which other they don't, which kind of offer work and they don't. So those tools are really helpful. We don't have yet a fully blown customer data platform, but with Incentivio, we had a lot of features that are a good proxy.
Right.
At least give us like some good on the customers that order from us. So they do online ordering from us. We get a good understanding of what they need, what they do, and how their life cycle is. So we're using that. We are considering. We probably want to have a tool that try to build the profiling of customers, including third-party delivery apps and our own thing. And they use generally credit card data. There's a space in which we're gonna double down this year. Still don't know yet, but it's important. Another part is menu intelligence. And that's another good vertical. Oftentimes, when you pick a menu, and especially in times like this where labor is very expensive, food cost changes a lot. Sometimes in an almost schizophrenic fashion, because there's things that used to be very cheap for decades have been cheap, and they suddenly go expensive, and you get a crisis in Ukraine, and suddenly flowers doubles up in price. But flowers has always been like very affordable, like staple, and so in all of this confusion, like you need to kind of like have a model in which you project the prime cost of your menu items, what the labor piece and the food cost, and then you like try to understand the economics of the item, where which item really the value that the people associate with the item, and which item is very successful. Like if the first time you come to do it, and I think the best use case, this is a very common one in the industry. I'm not going to say that blows anybody's mind, but to a newbie, and to me, certainly was very exciting when I heard it. Like, think about you come to do it for the first time, right? Or if you try, which is, a very complicated sauce that we made with a recipe from Filippo's grandmother that takes 8 hours to make, right? Just to make the sauce. Or if you order like an agnoli that is an entry-level vegan dish, which is still delicious, but it's largely a dish that is like, it's a very Italian dish. The agnoli is the pasta of like, it's sub-segment of Italian people that really love it.
Right.
If you eat the bolognese on your first visit, how often you're gonna, and how quickly you're gonna recount versus and how much am I gonna blow your mind versus if you order a dish that is more like of a niche offering, right? And so menu intelligence comes into that and really helps you, like, having the analytics of the menu and how it interacts with customer behavior really helps you, making good and smart menu decisions. We can really reshape the economic P&L pretty quickly, because it can increase, frequency, can change chicken, can change ticket size, it can change the bottom line. And so that's another beautiful tool. That's even, while the CDP is very complex to implement and oversee and to kind of like leverage, menu intelligence is very easy once the tool is in place to actually use and drive very quick decisions that have very powerful impact. So I love these two use cases with data, for example.
Yeah, no, and those are both amazing examples. I mean, the one follow-up I have there is, you talk about menu intelligence, right? And how much would you say it's a balance of, you have people come in that they like what they like, right? They order maybe the same thing over and over again, versus you maybe want them to try something new. It's like, hey, like, experience a different part of the menu. And I know a lot of it comes down to like again, I think we live in a world now where a lot of things are catered to our needs, right? Like you look at social media, like you say something out loud, you start to get ads for it, right? Like everywhere we go, it's pretty catered to what we want. So how much do you find a battle of like kind of giving them what they may already like through their buying patterns versus getting them to try something new? Like is there that balance that goes back and forth?
This is a very interesting angle. We have been thinking about this for a while. We don't have a good solution yet. I think one kind of like way to decline the point you were making is also, for example, for us, if you make everything from scratch, and if you make everything fresh, you make a promise, like your brand makes a promise. You need to shut it out loud, right?
Yeah.
But to a certain point, there is also a little bit of inconsistency, right? There has to be. It needs to be a small range within a big array. So you cannot have inconsistency, good versus bad. But you can have, it's a slightly more one way.
Yeah.
This time I feel it was slightly different in the sauce than compared to the last time. Now that kind of variability, right? the way we're trying to think of as is something that should be a selling point. Like it should be in a world of industrialized frozen dishes in which you go to McDonald's and you bring it
Right.
food by people that don't know much about food, but it's always the same. Our brand promise is to make it from scratch, and in making from scratch, it's always going to be great, but it might taste slightly different, and that's exciting because that's you don't remember, but when you were to go to your Italian grandma every Sunday for lunch, it wasn't always exactly the same because she wasn't even measuring things all the time, right? But it was always very good. And so I think that's a more of a niche use case. But we've been thinking a lot about this. How do we sell the slight differences? Because it's a beautiful thing when you commit to your customer. Look, you come here, you come to my home. I make everything from scratch for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And trying new things is almost is similar. Like you're bringing somebody out of the consistent pattern of always enjoying the same thing over and over and over. I think there are ways. I think many intelligence apps, because you see, people have different tastes, right?
Yeah.
But many intelligence apps you understand, even if you have different tastes, most people still very much like this sauce that you've never tried. Because you like white sauces, like you like so like our mushroom and truffle oil, and it's great for you. But most people that try the short rib ragu, they love it too. And so like it helps you many intelligence helps you make an incremental leap. So if you, when you, especially if you have a recommendation engine at the end of your online ordering, like we do for Incentivio, like after the order, we can tell you, okay, you want to try, we can recommend something that complements your dish, like a dessert. And we can recommend you maybe the dessert that we feel is the one that you like the most. And maybe we recommend you the dessert that we feel you like the most because based on all the other dishes you had, is the one that complements better and is the one that has more correlation of being successful. So we can use data that way, or we can use it to kind of like help experiment. I think we don't have a good solution yet, but we want to be in a place which I think, a simple thing that we're probably going to do is in our store, we want to put a sign in which we say, look, we make everything from scratch. Our promise is that it's great, but it's not always the same. The other thing that we want you to do is we want you to try things. Some names you don't understand because they're in Italian, some dishes you've never had. Because maybe your experience of Italian has been Olive Garden. You don't know what regional Italian is like.
Right.
Some Italians, people as well from my region, that don't know what they eat in the south or in the north. So it's completely normal. But our promise is, we make it from scratch. It can be different. And that's a thing that is a good thing, not a bad thing. And the other thing is we want you to try something. Try. If you don't like it, we give you something else. We don't have to worry about it. We want to create a safe environment for people to experiment.
Yeah.
Especially, I think maybe something that makes it easier for us is because people, being very authentic Italian, which is the core of our brand. Authentic Italian means, sometimes people really don't know what they are. And so it gives us when you come in and you don't understand 40% of the menu, it gives us the first point to connect to the customer and say, yes, of course, try this, fine, it's all good. We can, give us, the first question of a customer, what is that? It tells our staff something about them, and it tells them we can take their hand and kind of like make them feel safe about trying things. We're trying, I think it's an important part to build a differentiated brand. So it's a topic that, it's a topic that warmed me up quite a bit because we are trying to find a solution because we feel it will bring a lot of value to customers.
Yeah, and again, just from hearing you talk about it, there's definitely a lot of passion there. And I think even just, I look at my own experiences in dining, right? Like, I think we all tend to sometimes have our comfort zone, but there's times where I go a bunch of things, I'll try something I maybe never tried before. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Like, I would definitely come back and try this thing again. So I think that really ties into it. And maybe I want to do is maybe just take a step back and look at the overall industry. Now, a lot of stuff you shared is really, really great. The stuff that you're focusing on and what's helped your brand. Where do you see some of the biggest gaps today in the industry overall from a technology perspective? Like, and how do you see things going in the next year or two when it comes to, that world of hospitality and tech combining together?
Let me think for a moment about this because it's there's so many things, right? But I'm always biased towards the things that we're fixing. I think if I take this step back, like you were like you were suggesting. I think in terms of online ordering, we've been in a good place for a long time, but many restaurants still are not. Like when I see, and this is a very, very basic use case, but when I see a restaurant that I love, like, and I want to do order, and I go to order on their website, and they send me to their dash, like my heart's like break. Not because their dash is not, it's not that we're in their dash everywhere. Like, we like their dash, we work with them very closely, but it's your own customer. Like for the people that want to patronize your brand, like I don't know, don't save their commission. It's always going to be a smaller subset because the core of people will always order to third parties because they have different incentives. But the people that is yours, and so there's still a lot of like gap in the industry, in the small restaurants, but even up to multi chains, but still local operator with a non-technology mindset in building an online ordering that is really effective. Like that it's their own. That and now it's very, very easy. There are many ways to do it, from simple tools that do the basics to like more advanced tools like Incentivio and all that do a lot more. But you want to have your own delivery, you want to have your own branding with order, you want to know the customer so that you can reach out to them, and you want to also offer them delivery without your drivers, like through delivery integration to the party delivery services. But that's a basic thing that surprisingly I think there's still a big gap. I think another aspect I think that I think even POS companies are like trying to catch up. Like for instance, we use kiosks everywhere, and for many reasons, and it's not only to cut on labor, but I think kiosks offer like a good workflow for people to like compose orders, customize them, see the photos, like have all the information, and it's hard to put it on a menu. Like digital or printed, like you can't put every information in a dish, like where the ingredients come from, the food. And I think regardless of whether you want to have a very like I don't know deep interaction or you want to let your customers like do their own thing. And by the way, my advice is you should be able to do both, because we have customers that come every day. They can say hi because they like them, but they can just do their own order. The customer that they walk in the first, that customer will require somebody spending time with them to walk them through. You should do both, right? Depends where the customer is, but having a kiosk just in my opinion is a bad. You can choose to have your stuff with the customer pushing the buttons on the kiosk and do it. But I think it's something that we start to walk away, and we work with rival systems. The kiosk solution is good. Still have some gaps. I think the other leading POS providers are also like, I haven't seen a kiosk that amazes me. Whenever I go to Toast, like with Toast brand restaurant, and I went on the kiosk, like it's not an experience that amazes me. I think restaurants should increasingly have it, and hopefully like POS companies catch up with it, and we can have that experience like it's more of a part of restaurants, especially with service. I think these are like two things that are gonna happen. And I'm not saying anything controversial. I'm kind of like stating the obvious.
No, again, it's stuff I've heard. It's just I think the big piece you talk about is that owning the first piece of online ordering. It's like you want to know who your customers are and own that data, because that's a huge gap. Otherwise, how do you market to them? How do you build your menu intelligence? How do you build your brand and your community if you are and who you're selling to? And the second piece is just around that kiosk workflow, right? And how you can enhance the customer experience, where again, you may not be able to put that all into a menu, or if you're constantly changing your menu, are you going to keep reprinting menus, or that's another challenge as well, right? So again, it just takes away time from all the other things that you can do. I love what you share there. And right, what I'd like to do to kind of wrap this up, because I feel we could talk a lot of great things for hours, and really appreciate all your insights and your stories here. What I want to do to kind of wrap up our conversation is do a little bit of a lightning round. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. And first thing that comes to mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts there. And that's how we'll wrap up the show today. So first thing is, what's your go-to cocktail today?
Good cocktail? Aperol Spritz.
Yes. Aperol Spritz. Okay, I like it. And you mentioned you talked a lot about wine. Are you a big wine person?
I don't drink a lot, but I like good wine, yes. So I will consider it.
Do you have a specific bottle you'd recommend to the listeners today?
Always red. I like red better. I think it's easier to it's slightly healthier, if I could say. Can't go wrong with a bottle of Barbaresco, to be honest. Like, it could go wrong, but you have to try really.
Okay, there you go. So, a great bottle of red and Aperol Spritz. I like it. What's your preference, a brunch party or a dinner party?
Dinner party.
Why?
Generally we spend a lot more time because it lasts longer, and in Italian we don't have the concept of brunch in Italy, probably because we go to bed too late and we get up too late, so it's already lunch by then. But there's some beautiful lunch parties you can have when you, like, for instance, on Christmas or Easter, that you sit down at 1 p.m. and you get up for the wedding. So we get that. But dinner parties, after the day is already decompressed, the darkness outside kind of like bring the atmosphere, and then you can stay sitting at a restaurant for 3 hours and just conversation. As simple as that. Dinner.
I love it. I'm in the same boat, so I love it. You're obviously very passionate about food and about pasta. Is there a home cooked meal that you're famous for?
Ooh.
One dish that you'd say you're famous for?
Man. Well, provided that I'm a decent cook, and I cook a lot at home, but that's just cultural. But like the real culinary tractor in our brand is Filippo. I think pasta al pomodoro, like making a very simple pasta, but you make your own sauce from scratch. Doesn't take long, 20-25 minutes. A little bit of garlic and olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, garlic, onion sofrito, fresh tomato, the best one you can find, and the pasta, cook it al dente, add a little bit of parm. Simple. We have it, my kids love it, and as Italians, Italian cuisine is about the ingredients, but it doesn't have to be very hard. Yes, I'll stay simple with that.
And then the last question I'll wrap up with here is, you're obviously Seattle based. Is there a restaurant outside of your own that you'd love to shout out, a restaurant you love to go to outside of your own that you'd love to shout out for the listeners today?
Seattle. There is. I haven't been, the last. I've had 2 kids in the last 4 years, and so we haven't gone out very much. We have COVID.
Congrats. Okay.
But
yeah.
The place that we used to go that we liked, there's a place called Rock Creek. It's a true Pacific Northwest, kind of like chef-driven restaurant that does a lot of great seafood, and also a little bit of modern American cuisine. Not too expensive, stellar cuisine. I still remember the last dish we had. I think we went there before our first kid was born, a few weeks before. We had an amazing branzino, hard to find in Seattle. So if you go to Seattle, I'll go Pacific Northwest, and I'll go seafood, brilliant.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'm due for a trip out there, so I definitely want to. I always love getting recommendations from local restaurants everywhere I go. So that's great. So, Davide, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I mean, I feel like we could have gone for hours with your amazing stories and being so open with your background and sharing. So, to recap, what are some of the things we learned? I mean, branding is super important. Owning that customer data, understanding who your customers are, and being able to market to that is also very, very important. I think the industry has a long, and it's something that's ever changing. And technology, we will find a way at some point to get it all to work. But again, it's great founders like yourself that give us the insight for companies like us to be able to action upon it. So to wrap up, again, I'm your host, Arun, and this was another episode of Data Delicacies. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll bring on amazing guests, just like Davide, on to talk and share their stories. Davide, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to further the conversation about what you've talked about today?
They can always email me at Davide, Davide, at duecucina.com. Check our website. You can also reach me out on Instagram. As we're still our hands are everywhere. So if you write us on Instagram, I'll see it and I can get back to you. Thank you so much for having me, Arun. This was a lot of fun. Very excited.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you again, Davide. And again, you know where to find me. If you ever find yourself in Seattle, please go to Due Cucina restaurant. They're amazing food, and soon to be in Dallas, Texas. And then who knows where else, hopefully across the nation. Again, if you'd like to connect and learn more about Incentivio or Data Delicacies, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, or my email is arun@incentivio.com. If you want to be a part of the show, please reach out on LinkedIn. Be happy to accepting many guests that are coming through. So please reach out if you have some interest, and we'll find a way to get you on the show. For now, thank you very much for joining, and I really appreciate all your time, Davide. For our listeners, thank you, and we'll be on again soon.